Welcome to Back in Crime, a podcast presented by Texas Crime Travelers. I'm Stuart Fillmore, retired FBI agent.
And I'm Todd Hiles, retired Secret Service agent. In this podcast, we cover cases we worked and some we wish we had.
As lifelong street agents, we were where the rubber met the road.
While the big guys were doing press conferences, we were interviewing the criminals.
And because of that, we can take you inside these cases
and under the crime scene tape.
This is Back in Crime. Today's episode, we're going to go into a really interesting conspiracy theory out there. So you guys that like this stuff, you're going to eat this up. We talked about this on our TikTok channel, and it has really gone viral. So I hope you enjoy this.
It's about the Civil War gold. Now, this case has been around for several years.
Yeah.
And I think there is currently a pending court case related to this.
Yes, there is.
That's going on. And again, for us, we're the Texas Crime Travelers, and this really started out as a comment. One of our followers reached out to you on TikTok.
Yes. And I'd heard about it because, just the title Civil War Gold does tend to grab your attention. And it just was something that, I really started looking into. And it's just, the deeper you look, there are some weird things to it, and it's super interesting.
So you shot the TikTok video.
Yeah.
We had over 3 million views.
That's crazy, I know.
A ton of comments. You did a part 2 to the original video, and still more comments are coming in.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's great here. Let's address this in a full format.
Right. So basically, this conspiracy, it's these people calling the FBI liars.
Yeah. Effectively, they're saying that the FBI stole
9 tons of
Civil War gold.
So for this podcast, let's look at this as we're criminal investigators. Like, this was our case, and so let's talk about it, and we can offer some insight on what we think went right in this case.
Because there are some things that I think the public, maybe just because they're unaware of maybe how investigations go and some of the things that typically happen, just because they're just unaware of it, and it seems like maybe there's not an answer for it, and therefore that's when people start thinking of conspiracies, okay? So I think there are some elements of that in this, and so we'll address that and explain what we think is normal, but there definitely are some elements that I don't have an explanation for that really are pretty funky. So
right, and like I always say, we're going to take the listener under the crime scene tape.
Exactly.
Now, before we start talking about the Civil War gold investigation, there's 2 things that really stood out for me as an investigator.
Yeah.
One was that there's so many Civil War gold stories out there. I mean, there's gold buried in Georgia, Kentucky, Lake Michigan.
Yes. Yeah. And I think there's even a John Wayne movie where they go into there's some stolen gold. So yeah, that's the story's been out there for a long time.
It's a legend on a lot of them. But for this podcast, we're going to talk about the Civil War that's buried in Pennsylvania.
It's been in the news.
Yeah, it's actually, I guess it's dense, run, and it's located in western Pennsylvania.
Yes, a very rural area, a beautiful part of the state, though. It really is. It's gorgeous.
And the second thing that really stands out for me as an investigator when I heard this is that the FBI has a fine art crime team.
Yes. I heard about this a few years ago. There was actually a guy in my office that they were seeking people to join, this fine art team, and at that time, believe it or not, I could be wrong exactly about the acronym, but if it wasn't the official acronym, it became the unofficial acronym to us. But it was called the Fine Art Recovery Team. So you do the spelling on that acronym.
But it's actually the Fine Art Crime Team.
Yes. So it's instead of fart, it's fact. So,
and again, throughout the history of the FBI, the FBI has worked these kind of cases before of stolen paintings, things like that. I think there's even been cases like Super Bowl rings that have been counterfeited and sold at auction.
Yes.
Some of these.
So it is there is without a doubt a part of the FBI that specializes in these types of investigations. So this is not something new. It's been done before.
Right. And I think it was, the financial loss sometimes is real high in these cases. But I think a lot of this came out in 2003 with the war in Iraq, and some of the museums over there were raided.
That's right.
And a lot of these paintings and artifacts ended up in the United States for sale. And the FBI said, we've got to put together this team that can start investigating all this to try to get these artifacts back to these museums.
Yeah, because there is a black market in stolen art and those kind of things. And it proliferated during that time.
And again, we've these cases are so hard to work as an investigator because a lot of times there's con men that are involved.
Absolutely.
In these things.
And forgeries, and it really is. It takes a high level of skill and training to recognize that type of stuff and to know exactly what you're looking for and where to go. So it really is not a typical investigation.
So as an agent, I worked one of these cases that involved a con man. It was actually local law enforcement started it first through a undercover operation. They arrested a guy that was selling fake silver bars.
Now, be honest, Todd. You went in as a Fed, and you just stole the case from the locals. Isn't that how it always works?
Well, I think they actually called us to say if we wanted to adopt it because they wanted this guy federally prosecuted.
Yes.
So I went, and again, he's your con man, and I go and I interview him, and right from the beginning of the interview, he says, I'm ready to come clean. I want to put all this behind me, go to prison, and do my time.
Yeah.
I would like to mention that, I'm an incredible interviewer, and I got this con man to break, but it wasn't that. It was just out of the blue. He said, I'm ready to come clean.
Yeah.
And during this interview, he talks about the time that he's been selling counterfeit coins.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he actually has a list of the people that he's sold the coins to.
Okay. So he kept records on this.
He kept records of it, and sometimes a lot of the victims would advertise in papers that they would buy coins, and that's how he had some of their phone numbers from that. And so I was able to actually reach one of the victims, and they could not believe that this guy was a con man.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of con men have somewhat sociopathic personalities, so they are very good at masking who they really are.
And this victim, again, did not believe it at first. He said, that guy is so trustworthy. I can't believe he, would sell me these counterfeit coins. And their story was when they just, the con man has that story of, a relative passed away.
Yeah.
I found all these coins in there. I don't want them. I'll sell them to you. And they couldn't find like a meeting place because time was running short. But the victim says, hey, I'm going to a high school football game.
Okay.
And the con man says, I'll meet you there.
Yeah.
And they spend the first and second quarter of the football game sitting next to each other, giving their life stories.
Yeah.
And then at halftime, con man says, well, I got to get on the road, but let's walk out to the car and I'll show you my coins, and sold them to him.
There you go.
And just could not believe that he had that much of a relationship with the victim.
Yes.
And the victim had no idea that he was duped into those coins.
It's amazing, how many people I encountered, that were con men like this, not counterfeiters. I never really worked counterfeiting cases, but that just they had the gift of gab. They had a certain charm or charisma, and they used it. They could have used it for so many other things, but they used it to dupe people,
right?
And pull frauds.
Well, now here's a little bit of trivia for you. I know how much you love trivia.
Okay. I will say that I was on a winning team at the local brewery last week on the weekly trivia night, and our team won. So I'll take some kudos for that.
Okay, there you go, Riley. Here it is. The largest art theft in the U.S. occurred when?
Oh, that's, what? I think that's going to be 1990. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston.
That is correct.
I worked a small little element of that. A local motel, not even a hotel, a motel, called, and their the person that was cleaning up the room found in the some notes that were written in the trash can, and it referenced the Gardner Museum in Boston, art theft, police uniforms, like with a question mark or something, as if maybe that the robbers had,
and that's what they did in Boston.
Yeah, they
dressed
used
it up
police
as,
uniforms. Yeah,
they dressed up as
and
police.
So the people at the motel saw this and thought, is this somebody that is, are they part of this? What is this? And turns out it was somebody that was maybe writing an article about it. It was some kind of journalist or a writer. I don't remember specifically, but it was innocent,
right?
But so I actually had a small little piece of that case, and I think it's still unsolved to this day.
Yeah, they stole 13 paintings valued at over $300 million,
Mm-hmm.
and like you said, that was 1990, so that's over 33 years ago.
Yeah,
and no arrest and no. None of the paintings have been recovered.
For the benefit of the audience, because it's actually an interesting case. It really is. Maybe we ought to do a podcast on that sometime. But there is a documentary out there that I watched a few years ago about it. That it's a cool story.
Right. And so, if there's any listeners out there that have information about this theft, please reach out to us because there is a $10 million reward,
and we'll be happy to share it with you.
Yes. In fact, we'll only take 10%.
Exactly.
We don't need all 10 million. But now let's dig in to today's conspiracy.
Let's do it.
And we're talking about a location or a property that's in western Pennsylvania, and it's actually owned by the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it's on state-owned property.
And this piece of property, access to it, though, is through private property.
To go through some private property to get to it, which, not having actually seen it, I think it's the access to it is because the terrain around it is so mountainous and rugged that you're really prevented by any other means.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there are these stories that it seems like they've been passed down from generations to generations, but there's this idea that somehow during the Civil War, there's a shipment of gold coming through here.
I think by stagecoach, isn't that right?
Something like that, and it gets buried in the ground.
Yes.
And I know that the story sometimes changes to that it's Union soldiers that bury it out there because they think the South is going to come up and take it from them.
Yeah.
There's other stories out there that it's actually soldiers from the South.
Well, or at least Southern sympathizers who live in the North.
So there's been numerous articles and newspaper stories written about this. In fact, some of this documentation the FBI is going to use in their affidavit for their search warrant.
Well, and that's not unusual. When you have to write an affidavit to justify a search warrant, you rely on as much data as you can, from the past, and it's definitely this stuff's been out there.
Right. But before we get to that search warrant, let's back it up here for a couple seconds. So, over the years, there's been treasure hunters, and they've been searching for this gold.
Mm-hmm.
And at times, the state of Pennsylvania has given them permission to go out there on this property and to look for the gold.
Yeah, I think they were allowed to do a lot of preliminary digging or testing to see is there something here. I think they were just prevented from any major digging, right?
Right.
Or removing anything.
I guess it was always this idea that you just don't disturb the land.
Yes.
Now, at some point, these treasure hunters, they actually drill into the ground, and they feel that they found something interesting down there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's possibly gold, but they need to dig this. They need bigger equipment, and they need bigger drills.
Yes.
So they go to the state of Pennsylvania, and the state says, "Well, where do you want to dig?"
Sure.
And so these treasure hunters say, "Hey, this is where we're going to do it."
Yes.
Eventually, the state of Pennsylvania says no.
Right.
Now, this is where it gets really weird because...
Yeah, this is a weird twist to it.
Because it's almost as if this location that the treasure hunters told the state was a red herring.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's supposedly game cameras that somebody's installed out there, and lo and behold, they catch the state showing up digging at this red herring location.
Yeah, which, man, if that's true, that really stinks.
Yeah, that is just... And
that
again...
is bad.
The game camera are these cameras that are out there in the woods, and they activate by motion,
mm-hmm.
and they record what...
Sure, and they're not expensive. And they take quality photos too. It's amazing the quality of some of those game camera footage that you see.
Right. So now it appears that there's any type of bridge has been burned because the treasure hunters don't trust the state, and the state is not granting permission to get on the land.
Right. Now I'm sure that the state rebuts this in some form or fashion, but nonetheless, that's what's out there, and that's what brings them ultimately to do what they do next. Right.
Right. And this is because the treasure hunters, they don't give up easily. And
they are definitely persistent.
Yeah. So now they go to the FBI. They bring in the federal heat.
Yes. Go to the feds.
Right. And again, this is probably in the TikTok video that we made. This is probably one of the most commented parts. Is that why they brought?
Why do they go to the feds? And if they go to the feds, why? How can they even have jurisdiction? I'll be honest. That was the first question I asked. I never encountered in my years in the FBI. I never encountered something where it was a missing gold or missing anything from 135 years ago. So that was my initial question as well. So I understand that point of view exactly.
So in January of 2018, these treasure hunters, they have their meeting with the FBI. And they get the FBI excited about this. The fine art crime team is going to take the lead on this case. They open up a case file. It's a believable story that warrants further investigation.
Well, because by the time that the treasure hunters went to the FBI, they had their ducks in a row as far as how this could have happened, where it is. And so that there were a lot of the work was already done for the Bureau. They just had to try to maybe verify it and do their own independent corroboration of it.
Right. And again, I've looked at the file like you have, and I know as an investigator, they were thinking, even though it's not written anywhere in the file, but as an investigator, they've got to be thinking, who's going to actually own this gold? Is it going to be the state of Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
Is it going to be us as the government, the federal government that recovers it, or is it treasure hunters who found the location?
Well, that's part of what gave the FBI jurisdiction, is because it would be property of the U.S. government that was stolen, and so that the federal government, even though it's on state land, in that case, the federal government would have the authority and the jurisdiction to recover that because it's stolen U.S. property.
So within days of opening this case, the FBI goes out to that location and they do a site survey of the land, and they notice some of the markings, and there's some PVC pipes that the treasure hunters had drilled into the ground. I think they take photographs of all this stuff. A month later, in
Todd,
February.
also, isn't there some indication? And I'll admit, I haven't seen this site direct. I haven't seen it firsthand. I've just been able to see pictures and descriptions of it, but there is some description somewhere of indications that there's a man-made cave in there. That there is, without a doubt, some man-made elements that are old inside this cavern or this hole. Or
you're right. Yep.
Yeah.
They have photographs of that in the file. And I think they talked about, I think some agents actually crawled into that as far as they could go until they encountered spiders and whatnot, and they backed out. But
well, I know that firsthand, that feeling, because when we filmed the Bonnie and Clyde episode on Discovery Channel on Expedition Unknown, part of it was this cave where they were hiding
You went
out.
inside that cave.
And a little backstory to this real quick is I kind of scouted the cave for them before this was ever filmed. And so the first time I went in there, it's an honest to goodness cave. And that I did not, I don't know what I was thinking, but I didn't bring a good enough flashlight. So all I had was a light on my iPhone, So that doesn't go very far in a cave. So I went in as far as I could with natural light and what I could see with the iPhone. But I got to the point where the iPhone wasn't helping me much, and I could hear this kind of chirping thing going on, and so I knew it was bats. I just didn't know how many. So I know you're kind of poking fun that they ran into some spiders, but I'll be honest with you don't have the light, and it's pretty dark, and you hear things. it's scary, or at least I was. So I sympathize with that.
Well, it was more than just spiders. I think it actually said that part of this man-made cave had actually caved in.
Yes.
And so
there was some description of that as well.
And they didn't know, like, if it could collapse more and stuff like that. So in February of 2018, the FBI again goes back to this location. And this time they bring along an engineering firm that conducts a geophysical scan of the area.
Yes, with very, very sophisticated equipment.
And in fact, they've had maybe another visit out there before where they used ground penetrating radar.
Yes,
and I think you've used that before.
I have used that before. It was on a what in Hollywood, we Hollywood people, which I'm not, but called a sizzle reel, which is something you go out and film for the purpose of then providing or showing to a network to try to pitch a TV show. And in the course of trying to film a sizzle reel on the Dillinger case, we used ground penetrating radar, and I ended up finding this artifact, which was a map, which is a real artifact, but we had several other what I would call false positives where
the radar hit.
Yeah, the radar told us there's something there. And in one case, we had a backhoe out there, and we dug down probably 8 feet, and there was nothing there. So so you can have this high tech equipment, but it can maybe sometimes backfire on you.
Yeah. So not only with these visits out there to the location, the FBI also does some desk work, and they reach out to like the U.S. National Archives, and they request information about any lost Army gold shipments.
Absolutely, yes.
I know, according to the file, the FBI reached out to Wells Fargo. They have an archives department. If they had any shipments of gold from between U.S. mints during this time that could have been lost, the FBI reaches out to the Pinkerton Detective Agency because this agency was used to investigate government payroll thefts during the Civil War.
Well, I would go so far as to say that during the Civil War time that the Pinkerton Detective Agency would have been the FBI of its day.
Right.
Yeah.
And just a little side note there on the detective agency, that Alan Pinkerton formed it in 1852.
Yep.
Their headquarters was in Chicago, but at the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, their headquarters burned down and they lost all their records.
Yeah. Didn't Alan Pinkerton have some connection with maybe the Secret Service as maybe help found it, or?
I think there was talk. We've done other TikTok videos before where some people had commented that they may have protected, the Pinkerton agency may have protected Lincoln, President Abraham Lincoln.
Yes.
And wasn't there, his body was tried to be stolen one time, and they investigated.
Pinkertons were on that, yes.
They were
like
on
I said,
that.
the Pinkertons would have been the feds of their day.
And what's again, that's all an interesting topic about that.
It is.
And
maybe there's another podcast in that one.
What's kind of crazy to me is that there's a lot of records going back in U.S. history in these archives.
Oh yeah, it's amazing when you look back, how the level of things that were documented, or the depth they were documented.
I think some of this even shows some of the Civil War soldiers. Some of their records are from like 1861.
So the FBI tries to go back to the original source documents to try to verify this theft of the gold.
Right. Or anything that would indicate that there was a shipment of gold if it was missing. And I don't think they ever really got a definite answer on that.
I didn't see that, that there was an absolute specific report of such and such gold went missing, with any details specific to it. And one reason for that is, 'cause you would think that there would, on some level, there would be documentation or at least a report of some kind about a large amount of gold going missing.
It didn't show up somewhere.
Something, it just seems weird that it's not documented anywhere. Now, maybe to try to explain that is if the Union or the North or the U.S. government just thought that, well, we have all these Confederate sympathizers out there, if we publicly announce or put it out anywhere that, hey, we had some gold stolen, they might start trying to come after all our gold. So maybe they purposely didn't make make any reports of it for that reason. But you would still think internally there would have been, reports, because there in those days there was no freedom of information, so no one thought that the public would ever see this.
Again,
I don't know.
It could have all been lost in that great Chicago fire of 1871.
That's as good an explanation as any.
It could have been lost in that. So now we're probably about 3 months into this investigation, and the case agent prepares an affidavit of probable cause to search that location for the gold.
And just for folks that are listening that may not know what that means, or that is when you have to do a search warrant based on any investigation, the Constitution requires certain things, and that you have a level of proof called probable cause, which is what a reasonable person would conclude from a set of facts. And to justify your probable cause, to get a valid search warrant, you have to take that to a federal judge, and along with that, an affidavit is just simply a set of facts that you write up explaining what your probable cause is.
And I'm sure that they're going to use that engineering firm report from them.
Sure.
They're going to use all these newspaper
and all those,
articles.
That's what I'm saying. All those kind of facts
are
something that you look for to strengthen your argument, to justify that you have probable cause. Because any type of a search warrant, any kind of activity like that requires probable cause, whether it's an arrest or a search warrant or even more intrusive things like wiretaps, all that has to be justified. And so you with probable cause. And so you want to be able to justify your level of probable cause with as much information as you can.
And again, in this case, the agent, he swears to that he's got all this information, and the judge eventually signs the warrant.
Right.
So in March of 2018, the team of FBI agents, they go out and they serve the search warrant at that location. Mm-hmm. And again, we've seen it inside the file here. They really follow their SOP.
Well, yeah. So there's the standard process when you do a search warrant, and this whole thing is not typical of a search warrant or a procedure, but they essentially follow the same protocol,
right?
And that is to you have however many people you determine that you're going to need to do this, whatever it may be, and you show up, you go on the property and execute the warrant. And there are a lot of things that go along with that. One being, a certain, what we call an ops plan, an operations plan that, sets out everybody's duties. But basically, one of the things is when you first show up, you take photographs, video, you document how you find the home, the place, wherever you're going to be searching. You document that with as best you can. You do sketches of the area, with the proper dimensions and all that kind of thing.
Create all the diagrams.
Yeah.
They create administrative worksheet and logs that document
logs of
everything.
Anybody that's out there working, what they're doing, when they check in, when they check out. All that is documented, and then when I'll just finish the overall procedure. So once you're done, you take pictures, video of the place as it looks when you are finished. And generally, you try to leave it exactly as you found it, barring if you found evidence, obviously you're going to take that evidence. And so, and then that's it. You relinquish control of the scene. And that's the basic process of it. And from what I saw, they did seem to follow this, what I would consider a normal protocol, in doing this.
Right. I think they even go down to they document the temperature and the snowfall that's happening over these 3 days. They get right down in this administrative worksheet where they talk about when the backhoe switches from a bucket operation to a hammer operation. Mm-hmm. They document all that. And just like you said, with photographs, I think they took over 1,000 photographs.
A lot of photographs. I'll be honest, I skimmed over most of them.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
There's a lot of photographs in there. And then there's some agents that really took detailed notes of what happened every day, almost to the hour,
Right.
of what was going on out there. And also out there, not only did they have the dig site, but they created 2 base camps.
Mm-hmm.
And each base camp had a portable generator, heater, and lights because, let's face it, this was a 24-hour operation out there.
Well, let's explain why it's a 24-hour operation. Because, and this would be true of in any type of search warrant where you can't finish it in a normal work shift, okay? So...
And again, that normal work shift is going to be pretty much 9 to 5.
Pretty much 9 to 5. That's going to be the typical work shift, okay?
Especially in this case because they had to bring in third party, the people that were actually doing the digging. They contracted with somebody to come in and
someone's out there running the equipment and so forth. They're paying for that. And so, all that, that's not typically, to my experience, was not going to be something you do 24 hours.
No.
Okay, now that said, there are search warrants where, again, the volume of work needed goes beyond the work shift. So you don't relinquish control of that scene yet. So you just simply, people
secure it,
stop working, and it's secured until the searchers come back. Okay, I've seen that happen. That is not unusual, depending on how big the site is.
And in this case, there were some FBI that remained there overnight out there
to guard it. Because the purpose of that is that they're guarding the integrity of the scene. Someone could theoretically come in and mess it up,
right.
and that's very inarticulate description to say you just want that crime scene to have as much integrity as possible, and so therefore you just don't want anyone in there, no matter what they may do.
Right. And again, this isn't a life or death situation that they can't stop digging.
Yes. I think it's safe to say that no one's in, yeah.
And probably these construction crews, typically don't have, 3 shifts out there working. It's just one shift, and they're just going to work in daylight hours.
It's also there's cold weather out there. It is a somewhat harsh environment. Having the base camp with the tent and warmth and a place to
lunch
rest or have food is perfectly normal and nothing unusual about that.
And again, according to the log, during these 3 days that they're out there, there's some news stations that come out there, and they do filming. I think some of the state officials come out there. The treasure hunters are brought out there.
Yeah.
They're escorted to the dig site to show what's going on.
Yeah.
And again,
and I'll tell you why. If this were my case and I'm the case agent on it, I would seek their help, actually, because they're the ones that have been on this for years. They know every square inch of this site, this property. So I'm going to want them out there. I want to know what all the stuff they've done in the past, where they've hit speed bumps, they've had snags. I want all that out there. I want to rely on this guy. I don't want to have to reinvent the wheel out there.
Exactly.
Right? So I would have them out there. And again, we can get into this, some where the problems I see with this, but one of them is that is maybe not having these guys there the whole time. And I know you're going to start touching on that. So that's where we start getting into some real problems.
Right. And again, the diggers are not the FBI. It's a third party that's been contracted to come out here to dig.
And Todd, let me also explain one other thing at this point. Why I wouldn't have a problem with the media being there the whole time, as long as it's understood that the FBI controls that scene and they can't go anywhere that they're not escorted. Okay. And this is a unique circumstance. Normally, that wouldn't even be a thought in a typical search warrant. Okay, anyone, non-government personnel, is not going to be at a search warrant that they're not part of that case in some way. Okay, the reason being is because you're going to get evidence. You're looking to take evidence at a search warrant to be used in court against someone to put them in jail. And so you want that. That's what I mean about the integrity of the scene. You want that chain of custody on that evidence to be as perfect as it possibly can be.
And you don't want it contaminated by...
Contaminated. Okay, so, but in this case, you've got a Civil War era crime that no one is going to go to jail for. Right. Okay, so there is not going to be a trial. You don't really need, the chain of custody of evidence is not near as critical, other than that it, to justify or to authenticate an artifact.
Right.
Okay, but that does not rise to the level of beyond a reasonable doubt putting someone in jail. So that's why I'm saying I think some of the things that you normally would see in a search warrant could be eased in this process. And in fact, I think honestly, having the media there would have been advised for the government to do.
It would have been very helpful.
Yep.
As the years have gone by now.
Yes.
On this. And again, and maybe it's a situation where they say it's unsafe to be up there by the dig site.
Okay.
But again, at some point you're not digging. Let them walk up there and see.
Or put them at a reasonable distance where they're safe, but yet can still monitor and see what's going on.
Exactly. So now they're out there for about 3 days, and they dug deeper.
Again, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Again, it's all on the site. How big the site is, or how much you're searching, is that's how long you'll be out there.
Right. And I think they even dug deeper and wider than they originally planned. Mm-hmm. And according to their reports, they find nothing.
Yes.
They fill the hole back in, and they break down the campsites, and they depart.
Let's go back just one quick second, and you touched on all the high-tech equipment that they used. Comment on that just a little bit, is that their preliminary testing from all that equipment showed something in the ground that was big.
Right, a mass of
something, and that it was some type of a metal consistent with gold or silver, some kind of precious metal.
Correct. And again, that was that.
And all their testing showed this.
Right, that engineering firm.
Correct. I think maybe they did 2 different types of testing. I will be the first to admit I cannot sit here and articulate the exact equipment and methods used, but from what I read, it was very reliable and sophisticated equipment.
Some type of scan of the area.
Yes, yep. Yes. And they go into great detail to explain this. And so now you're left with all this reliable preliminary testing, and we've ended up with the dry hole. So how's that explained?
Right. And again, they fill this dry hole back in.
Yeah.
They depart, and then I think you actually have a copy of their closing report.
Yeah, and it's just it's a 1-page report just saying, hey, we had this information, we investigated it, we searched for it at the site that believed it was going to be. There was nothing there, and we closed the case. I was hoping to see a little more detail in this, because it's not unusual that when you close a case that you just give a quick summary of what happened and what happened along the way. And me personally, when I did these closing, they're called electronic communications, ECs, that's what they're called. When I would do a closing EC, I was kind of had in the mind that if it was a case that maybe there wasn't a resolution to, and that meaning basically you didn't get a conviction, right? I sometimes if there were things that could have maybe been investigated later, I would write all that stuff up just so that if someone came along behind reopened it, they could go to that closing memo, and that would tell you all the issues.
And that one was sort of short and sweet.
Yeah, that's a short and sweet way of saying it. Yes.
Yeah, that we didn't find anything. And of course, as we said earlier at the beginning, now they're called liars because the treasure hunters say, they actually found gold out there. Yeah. And
so now the issue is
they kept us away.
They kept us away, and apparently that's what's funky to me, is that you've worked hand in glove with these treasure hunters. They've brought you the case. You've gone out, you've done all this, and they were along for all the preliminary testing, right? And so and you get out to the site, you're about to do it, and now they get sent. The treasure hunters get sent to the base camp, and they are not to leave there. And in fact, from there, I think they even get booted out of the tent or the base camp. Right? They were stuck out in their cars. So I don't understand that. That to me is a real unexplained anomaly in this, because again, you're not talking about a criminal case that that you have to have. You're going to try to preserve DNA, fingerprints, and all that kind of stuff. Right. You're not prosecuting anyone.
Right. Nobody.
This is a historical case that really that should be, I think, open to everyone.
Right. And again, when we did our TikTok videos, so many people commented, why did they even bring in the FBI at the beginning of this? And we talked about it. These guys, these treasure hunters, didn't have the access to the
they were barred from the state by doing anything.
And I think they themselves have to be pretty pleased that the FBI did, in fact, bring in an engineering firm that did this survey and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But like you said, why did they have no longer access to this?
That's to me, that's one of the big question marks in this that I have no explanation for. Again, if I had been the case agent on it, my argument, and I would have argued quite sternly about that. Hey, why not? Let's keep the media here. Let's keep the treasure hunters here. We got nothing to hide, and if you do recover this gold, it's a fantastic story, and it would be great PR. For the FBI,
Exactly.
We don't really go into political issues on this. We stick with just, working crimes and working investigations and solving crimes. But there's no doubt that the FBI, I think, currently has somewhat of a credibility problem.
Yep.
And this would have been a perfect opportunity to just, a feel-good story, if you will.
Right. And it's this idea that, they sent the treasure hunters home. But yet the FBI remained out there overnight.
Yeah.
And I think there's witnesses
again, and
in
that's
the area.
That's not in and of itself anything sinister.
And I think there were some witnesses that they believe that the digging continued to go on.
They hear the machines going all night.
They could hear them.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm not going to sit here and say that that a witness is lying or what they're reporting is not true. My thought about that, my explanation may be is it's winter, it's cold. They got generators going.
The generators are running for heat. There's lights.
But I think that there's some witnesses that acknowledge that, okay, yeah, I know what a generator sounds like, and I know what maybe a backhoe sounds like. It's two different things. It was definitely digging going on. So that is reported. It is strange. It is mysterious.
And I think another one of a lot of the comments was, why did they have the search warrant sealed?
Okay. Again, that is not anything that is necessarily.
It's a common practice.
It is pretty common
to get it sealed.
It is pretty common.
I know before, when I've got search warrants before, I might have the judge sign it on Friday, and I'm not really running it until Wednesday of the next week.
Exactly.
And so we get it sealed because, again, these are public documents. If they're unsealed,
well, the purpose of sealing it is effectively so that before you can serve that search warrant, because again, you're putting together the people that are going to do it. There's a lot of logistical requirements to get this done, and in the meantime, getting those logistical elements in place, you don't want the people that where you're going to be searching to know that this is coming, because they could get rid of evidence, they could destroy evidence, they could hide it, they could move it. All that, so you want that to be as you just don't want that out there.
Right. You could be the case agent and you're anticipating something happening later in the week, and you're going to wait for that to happen. Maybe they're going to start printing counterfeit money on Tuesday, but you have your warrant already to go in there on Wednesday. Yeah, kind of a deal.
Again, the sealed search warrant is not. Again, that is not anything that is necessarily sinister. And I'll say this on the flip side of it, of why you would seal it, that's suspicious about it, is, again, we're not talking about something that is a crime that someone's going to get rid of the evidence. You're talking about presumably 9 tons of something that's been out there for years that no one has taken.
Exactly.
So in the meantime, they're probably not going to get out there, between now and when you get your team together to do the search warrant.
Right.
Yes. So again, that there is, I can see the argument that, why did you need a sealed search warrant?
And we did have a lot of witnesses also at the time that the FBI is out there digging, that they saw an unusual amount of armored trucks in the area.
Yes.
And I think,
even to the point some witnesses described that they were closing streets so that these things could roll through there.
And again, if you found something out there, 9 tons of gold bars, you probably would have to put them in an armored car to get them out of there.
Well, I guess that makes sense. In all the years I was in the FBI, none of the field offices I was in had armored cars. It's just nothing that we ever needed. Okay. So it would be something that would have to be maybe contracted for
another third party.
Another third party to bring out armored cars. And why you would need an armored car versus just, you already have an FBI vehicle and you have FBI agents who are armed and I know from some of those game cameras that came out, they caught some of the footage of the FBI out there on the perimeter of this place. And, you had the guy he was fully decked out, maybe in the SWAT type uniform outfit.
I've seen those pictures.
With the AR rifle. Again, not in and of itself anything unusual about that. They're there to guard the perimeter, and you don't know what you may face, so you're prepared.
It could be a wild animal.
But that said, up there, if you do find the gold, okay, you have those type guys out there with those type capabilities. I think you could probably, put it in some kind of heavy duty vehicle without bringing an armored car out there. And again, going on the armored cars, when I first heard that, I'm thinking, I guess I was initially thinking like military type armored cars, like Humvees or that kind of thing. But I actually saw a witness interviewed directly who described it as, the type of armored car you see that roll up to a bank.
Right.
So again, that's just nothing that I ever knew that we had in the FBI.
So there's definitely enough abnormal things that happened out there.
Some funky things to it.
Yeah, I'd call it funky.
So
that happened out there.
You have the high-tech equipment that, without a doubt,
finds a mass,
confirms all the previous testing that had been done before, that there is something funky down there. They dig a gigantic hole that has nothing, but in the course of digging this big hole, you bar the media, you bar your cooperating, witnesses, so to speak, the treasure hunters. You bar them from it, and you
presumably work overnight out there.
Yeah.
Well, they're not around.
Yeah. And you have the armored cars showing up out there. I think there's even a witness that describes seeing the armored cars riding low, as if
they're weighted down,
to imply that there's a heavy, it has a heavy load. Gold is very heavy. So that said, it is funky to me. It is funky. I think if they, came up empty on this, I just think they shot themselves in the foot by not just having a transparent look at how this whole thing went about.
Or why it took court cases to get some of the stuff released that's in the file. That, of course, stuff that we've seen.
Yeah.
I know as an investigator, something that's difficult for me to overcome is that throughout the file, I don't see any type of paperwork or any type of a discussion that would have been had with the treasure hunters saying that, we as the FBI, if we find something there and it's whatever the value of that is, you're going to get a percentage. I mean, we always pay informants all the time for seizures. Yeah. They get a percentage of what we seize, whether it's bank accounts, things like that. And why this was lacking throughout all that file, it just kind of struck me kind of odd. Like they never came up with that idea.
There's nothing documented in the file that I saw as well. But I did see something, I think, in the reported in the media that there was maybe an understanding of some kind of a finder's fee, because I think it was understood that if this is true, if this is stolen U.S. gold, this is the property of the U.S. government. And we're happy to get it back, and we're happy for your input, and we're willing to, I want to say I saw that, and even coming from the treasure hunters, that was the understanding about.
Because I know there was talk early on when the treasure hunters were trying to get the assistance through the state. Mm-hmm. Somebody in the state had mentioned, hey, whatever you take, you have to give the state some of that.
Oh,
some of those bars.
I can't comment on that.
Mm-hmm. It was just, to me, it was just kind of weird that I didn't see it anywhere that they wouldn't have had some type of a written agreement. Mm-hmm. Since they had meetings. They had meetings with the U.S. Attorney's Office, things like that, they didn't come up with.
I agree with you.
That's not in the file.
That is a little odd.
Right. Well, there you go. There you have it for the conspiracy gold.
There it is. I mean, it is. There's some funky stuff to it, and I would love to visit that site and go out there myself and just really get that feel that you can only get by being in a place in person.
Well, again, that's just one of these Civil War gold buried stuff. There's more. I mean, we definitely can load the car up and spend a summer going through Georgia and
I'm on it, man.
all
the
way
to
Lake Michigan.
I love it.
Pack our shovels and see what we can find out there.
Hey, we're the Texas crime travelers, right? That's how this whole thing got started. We wanted to go to crime scenes.
And we can get on the road, do some traveling.
I love it.
So again, as a listener, hit that subscribe, follow button, share with your friends.
Yeah, keep those comments and questions coming. We love it. Love getting the feedback.
Hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for listening.
Thanks a lot. This has been the Back in Crime podcast presented by Texas crime travelers Todd Hiles and Stuart Fillmore. We are the executive producers. Grace Hiles is the producer and director. Theme music composed by edbandas. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and our YouTube channel at Texas Crime Travelers.